Throughout my music production and composition journey, I've been able to boil all of my thoughts and principles down into 5 keys that guide me through every project and track I create. These keys keep me on track and reinforce a healthy mindset when I begin making music at any point in the day or at any point during a project. And I truly wouldn't be able to do what I do without them keeping my mentality in check. Let's get into them. Key number 1, it's okay to be wrong. This principle envelops all principles that follow and should be a staple in every music producer's mindset. You are going to be wrong sometimes, and often, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you take it as an expected circumstance and with humility. When you are just starting out, you are going to make mistakes. For instance, you may write a horn part that persists without breaks for a player to breathe for 2.5 minutes. If your goal is realism in your sound or to emulate an actual orchestra playing a piece, well, I don't know a single horn player who can play like that for 150 seconds. So you're wrong there, and that's okay. I have music on streaming services from when I started out where horn players apparently don't need to breathe. I'm not going to take it down out of embarrassment. I'm going to leave it up and let my music that followed demonstrate that I learned from that mistake. You are going to learn so much over the course of your music production journey that will reframe everything you thought or did in the past, and I find a tangible shift and growth in an artist's proficiency from their earliest tracks to their latest to be incredibly endearing and interesting. People love having someone to root for. Your musical journey and catalog has the potential to be like a training montage from Rocky or something. Having a frame of reference from where you started to where you are now is key, not just for listeners, but for yourself, to gauge what you need to improve on in your application of everything you've learned. Not only will you learn from doing, you will also learn from criticism, and that's just as important as receiving encouragement. However, much of that criticism may not be friendly or even constructive. For example, I come from a metal guitar background and shifted into wanting to create orchestral music for video games. I made my first couple of orchestral pieces for my personal D&D campaign that I was playing with some friends, and I used some free VSTs and shared it to a forum where I was absolutely obliterated by this one particular individual. I was intimidated by orchestral percussion and inexperienced in percussion that was not a drum set, so I had essentially used the orchestral percussion pieces in my ensemble as a makeshift drum set, essentially achieving a type of JRPG sound, which is what I was going for, and boy did this person not like that at all. I was told that not only was my music a slap in the face of orchestral music, but it was barely music at all and would never be performed by a real orchestra. That kind of stung. And after my ego recovered, I decided I would go forward trying to prove that person wrong, that I actually could write music that could be performed by an orchestra, even though that's not my goal now or then. And I still don't think I'm quite there, especially with percussion, but I'm so far beyond where I was when that interaction took place years ago. My point is that criticism is going to come no matter at which stage in your musical journey you are. It's imperative to extract the lessons from both constructive criticism and not so constructive criticism. There should never come a time when you say to yourself, I have done it all. I have learned it all, and there's nothing left for me to learn. Musicianship is a lifelong endeavor. It is impossible to have heard every song, written every note in every sequence, and used every tool. Being wrong, making mistakes, and picking up the lessons of failure is what creates the best musicians of tomorrow. Willingness to learn from mistakes, to bear the brunt of criticism, and instead of taking it as a sign to quit, taking it as a sign to grow and improve is the most important thing any musician can do. Oftentimes, criticism won't even come from a place or person that wants you to improve. They want you to quit. In that scenario, you may not have even done anything wrong, but you may have done so much right that they feel threatened by the comparison of their work to yours. It's just as important to be able to filter responses like that and distill them into yet another reason to keep going and get better. As you do so, you will get to a point where you are able to really identify who is actually trying to help you and who you can ignore. It's okay to be wrong in your orchestration and composition. It's okay to be wrong in your mixing and mastering chain. It's okay to be wrong in all aspects of your musical journey, as long as you are willing to admit it when you can, grow from it, learn how to do things differently, and not stop creating. Key number 2, mindset over tools. I can't start making music until I have the right tools. What is the best DAW for music production? One of my favorite artists uses this, so it must be the best, and I need it to be as good as they are. This is a major pitfall many new composers or producers fall into. In the guitar space, amongst many others, I've heard it referred to as gear acquisition syndrome. or GAS. Basically, it refers to such a focus on acquiring the right gear or chasing a particular tone so hard that the music suffers to the point of never even being worked on, let alone finished. Music and creation is put on the back burner, while collecting gear, software, effects, and plugins becomes the priority. In reality, the gear doesn't matter nearly as much as some people think. Of course, better gear can make things quicker or easier or even a higher quality from which you can start, but it is not a requirement for making music in the first place. Our ancient ancestors made music with sticks and their voices, not even needing a tool. One does not need the most expensive state-of-the-art plugins or VSTs to make beautiful music. One simply needs the time and the willingness to put into learning and using the resources they have to the greatest extent possible. Actually, many people, myself included, will buy those expensive plugins and realize that the plugins themselves don't actually make their music that much better, even if the initial quality sounds better or their idols use the same tools to great effect. While this is a very complex issue that deals with differences in experience, application technique, and orchestration itself, it can also be boiled down to how well the user knows the tool. Some free, low-budget, or bad-sounding VSTs can be used to make incredible music or textures because the user knows how to use that tool extensively to extract exactly what they're looking for from it. And therein lies the real secret. The best DAW, the best VSTs, the best plugins are the ones you know how to use. Even stock plugins from DAWs like Logic are often hailed as so good you don't need anything else out of the gate. Even so, there will inevitably come a time when you have reached the limit of what a piece of software or a VST can accomplish, even if you pull out all of the tricks that you know. Then, and really only then, is when you should be looking into upgrading your tool to the next level that can accomplish what you're trying to do in the VST that can't handle it. By pushing your knowledge of budget or free VSTs to the extreme, by the time you upgrade to the pro level tools, you will have a vastly greater experience level and an ability to then push those higher level VSTs to their limit comfortably. The knowledge gained through the time spent learning what you have is what allows you to start from a place of confidence and expertise with new tools, many of which have the same parameters as all other VSTs, like decay, attack, dynamics, expression, etc. Instead of approaching these tools and by extension your own music from a place of scarcity and desperation, like I need this particular tool to make good music, you will be approaching it from a place of experience and certainty, like the string runs in my old VST are not good enough, but this new VST can handle them, and I know exactly how to use it to get what I need. By all means, if you have the desire and frankly the money to start with the pro level VSTs, you have every right to do so. However, there may come a time where you actually find you don't like that tool and actually favor a different one, and you've lost that investment because it is now collecting dust in your plugin list. It's almost always better to start from something simple and cheap, or even free, to learn the basics and really define your style, wants, and needs before dropping a lot of cash on something you may or may not actually use. Key number 3, tools and VSTs are an investment. When someone inevitably asks me what VSTs and sample libraries I use in my music, I sometimes get self-conscious about it. I've spent a ton of money collecting the repertoire of sounds I like to use. Like, a lot of money. After learning to use the free tools that were available to me when I started and really nailing down what I look for and what I personally need in my sounds, I splurged on VSTs that I knew would serve me for a very long time. There are very few VSTs that I have purchased that I don't use on nearly every track I create, and the ones I don't are very niche instruments I purchased for a specific project or purpose. Even then, I will frequent certain forums and Reddit communities where people almost exclusively tell others to pirate expensive sample libraries or DAWs. I'm not here to pass moral judgment on that, and in my teenage years I may or may not have sailed the 7 seas for certain music production related things myself. What I found through my own experience, however, is that having access to everything under the sun was just an extension of GAS that paralyzed me in my productivity. For example, while working on a track using strings, I would write one singular violin line that I liked, but it didn't sound the way I wanted it to. Rather than mess with the dynamics or expression modulation, I automatically jumped into throwing that MIDI line into several other sample libraries I had acquired, and when none of those made me happy, back to sea I went. When all was said and done, I had spent hours searching for the perfect sound instead of learning the tools at hand and getting the perfect sound out of them. If that scenario sounds generic, I assure you it was, for me, because every track I tried to make ended up the exact same way. Learning the plugins I had wasn't enough. I felt like there had to be one out there that had the exact sound or preset I was looking for right out of the box. So rather than grit my teeth and actually learn how to get the sound I desired, I vigorously searched for a solution that was more of a band-aid or quick fix for my severely lacking production knowledge. Eventually, I got tired of that seemingly endless process and was desperately unhappy with my mostly unfinished music and myself. I felt guilty because I had spent an unacceptable amount of time trying to skirt around actually learning my tools and had damn near nothing to show for it. Rather than wallow in that self-inflicted sorrow, I decided to start fresh, and I deleted everything except my free VSTs, and created an entire album of music from those, with the goal of actually learning how to use them to their full potential. As I reached the limits of those tools after some time, I started purchasing the more robust pro sample libraries one at a time. Expensive? Yeah, absolutely. Could I have acquired those same libraries by other means? You bet I could have. But the way I viewed it, and the way I view it now, is as an investment in myself. I spent the money as a promise to myself. I'm going to use this tool to make my money back. I am determined to make this piece of software pay for itself. Is that weird? Maybe? But reframing the purchase as an investment in my future was instrumental in getting me excited about making music again, and determined to finish tracks. Again, I'm not naive or passing moral judgment on piracy. I know this stuff is expensive, and I'm lucky to have been in a position that afforded me the opportunity to buy this stuff outright. But I think the mentality of investing in yourself is so much more important than people realize. It's so easy to say, I want to make music, and I will make music in any way I can, by any means necessary. And yeah, hell yeah, brother, I support that. But I also think that spending the money for good tools is your own personal vote of confidence in yourself. It's going all in on your future and your abilities. It's telling yourself that you believe in your music so much that you want to invest in it. You're putting skin in the game and taking a risk and placing a bet that you can actually make something happen. That is why I've spent the money I have on my own setup. And many people may think I'm foolish for doing so, and maybe I'm wrong in my outlook on this, but remember my first principle? Key number 4, deadlines are king. One thing I see everywhere on the forums I frequent is people asking how others finish their music. How do you all know when a song is done? I have a bunch of starts to tracks, but I can't seem to finish any of them. I suppose it could be helpful to provide some help from a music theory or arrangement perspective, but I honestly feel like the most powerful thing that has helped me actually finish tracks are deadlines, whether they are real or artificial. My bread and butter is video game composing. I got my start in this by doing an ungodly amount of game jams with online teams, and while it was really fun and a great way to meet other people just starting their own journeys in game development, I think outside of the networking, the biggest benefit I got from participating in those jams came from having a hard deadline. Our game had to be finished and submitted in 3 days or a week or a month, whatever. Everyone on the team had to make sure their contributions were ready in a timely fashion, even well before the submission deadline, so that the programmers could put everything together and bug test before the game was actually submitted. All that is to say, as the composer for the game's music, I had to get really good at putting together quality music quickly. Often, good enough was the name of the game. Perfect just wasn't possible in the time allotted. Quick decisions, sacrifices, reworking good ideas that had promise but were underdeveloped. All of this was extremely important, not just to get my work finished on time, but to not disappoint my team. Having a team like this is like having accountability partners built in. Whether or not you want to do video game music like I do, I think there's something to be gained from participating in game jams, if only to get the experience of working under a tight deadline. It forces you to finish the task you set out to do while making hardline decisions to get the job done. There are even game jams on itch.io that aren't building a game but focused on creating the soundtrack. I've seen plenty of musicians just join these week-long jams to see if they could do it, rather than trying to make an actual game soundtrack. If game dev is not your thing, the same concept can be applied to collaboration on a single or album with another artist. Having someone you're working with keep you accountable by asking questions or assigning tasks, or something as simple as practicing being dependable by telling your partner, I will have this drum pattern finished by this time next week. It not only sets the expectation for your collaborator that you can put the work in and deliver punctually, but actually sets new expectations for yourself. Through doing these kinds of projects, your limits become really clear and you learn exactly what you are capable of. Plus, having another musician to collaborate with is a fantastic way to learn the things that you may not have been exposed to otherwise. And if that's not something you're interested in, I encourage everyone to set artificial deadlines for themselves. It's so easy to get bogged down in trying to make a mix or orchestration perfect, so much so that I've seen people work on writing a 3-minute song for over 100 hours, or mix one singular finished track for months. When that happens, when you get so bogged down in the details and trying to make things perfect, you are more than likely losing way more than you gain. When you set a deadline, like, I will finish this track by midnight on Friday this week, you are making a promise to yourself that once that deadline comes, you are finished with that track and on to the next one. Rather than fighting tooth and nail to get one track to the absolute pinnacle of your standards, you are taking what you learned from the failures and hardships of older tracks and applying that knowledge to make something new. You are getting better at making quality tracks way more quickly, and like with so many other things in life, you are exercising through repetition to get better. There are so many tracks I've made that I cringe while listening to now, years or months after I've released them, noticing things I could have done better compositionally or mix-wise, but I do not go backwards. We only move forward in this house, and I will watch out for those pitfalls in my next tracks going forward. In my opinion, it is so much better to have 3,000 hours of music production experience and 200 tracks to show for it than 3,000 hours and 5 tracks. Again, the growth of an artist, clearly able to be traced through their songs, is what inspires and interests me. And I think having deadlines set for you or set by you is instrumental in leveling up your expertise like nothing else. Key number 5, release everything. I, and hopefully you, have internalized the idea that I'm going to be wrong a lot, and that my tools don't necessarily determine the quality of my knowledge or my music. I've also made a promise to myself that I'm going to invest in my music and learn the ins and outs of every tool at my disposal. And through deadlines, I am promising myself that I will finish every track I can in a timely manner to a standard that I am comfortable with as good or even great occasionally. So now what? This is the really easy part. Release everything you make. Unless you are explicitly making music for you yourself to enjoy alone in your office or your car, you are doing the world a disservice by not sharing your art. Art, and in my case music, is the embodiment of me as a human, the tangible representation of my experience, my imagination, and my emotional state. That is what your music is too, and even if you just make music you would want to listen to, there are so many people out there that would revel in your expression as well. The music you make does no good sitting in your drive not being heard. Music is a distinctly human expression, and even if your music is sloppy, not perfectly mixed, or not perfect to your standards, it deserves to be heard, because humans themselves are sloppy, improperly mixed, and imperfect. The imperfection is where we find the ability to adapt, learn, and grow, and your music reflects the nature of humanity as a whole. Just like you aren't going to like every person you come across, not every person is going to like your music, and that's okay. Just like how we revel in finding the friends and lovers we click with, we also revel in finding the music that speaks to us. And you will never know who connects with your music if you don't release it for people to discover, and that is a tragedy in my eyes. Releasing everything you make just presents you with another opportunity to be wrong, to learn something new and apply it as you push forward to the next release. Someday you will be able to look back on your old tracks and trace your development as an artist, and ideally feel some sort of pride in your growth. When you are constantly pushing forward, changing the way that you make your music and just sending it after you're finished, it's so easy to lose track of all the small details that gave you a hard time in older music. All of a sudden, after months or years and hundreds of tracks, you can look back and be blown away by your progression over that time. It is so satisfying on a personal level and also endearing from an audience perspective. People want other people to root for. That's what a fan is. And your fans are just out there waiting for you to find them, or vice versa. Don't keep them waiting. So what are some of your principles when it comes to being creative or making music? These are just mine that I've internalized over the years, and they may not apply to you. If they do, great! But if they don't, I encourage every one of you to really think strongly about what makes you sit at your computer or pick up your instruments. What is it about making music that drives you? And why? It's easy to fall into a trap of comparing yourself to others, of doubting yourself and your abilities, of feeling like you don't deserve to be heard, or that you're not grinding enough at this thing. It's so important to have a healthy relationship with your creative process and yourself, because if you don't, your art becomes tainted with expectation and worry. Really asking yourself what principles drive your creativity and internalizing them to be non-negotiable is huge. And I hope through this explanation of mine, you're able to determine what yours are and maintain a healthy mindset and outlook with regard to yourself and your work going forward. Happy composing!